From the creators of The Shucked Oyster, enter the dark surrealist world of Bloodmore, a new campaign setting for Shadow Dark RPG. Sign up at the link below to get notified for the Kickstarter launch on June 3rd. Welcome to the Black Lodge Games review of Horde Wars Advanced by Blackwall Games. This is a fantastic book, and we have a ton to cover here, so I'm going to have to move through a lot of it fairly quickly to get to the stuff that I think is actually probably the most important. But I did want to say thank you to Blackwall Games. He did send us 2 copies of this, the soft cover, which is here, and underneath it, the hardcover premium edition. And we're going to go over a little bit of the differences between the two, the physical build quality, all that sort of stuff in the very first part of this video, because there are some actual differences. The content of the game is identical in either version that you get, but I would say there are costs and benefits to each one. As there is with everything, there are always trade-offs. But this is a fantastic game. It's really, really good. I've been playing in a campaign for about 2 months now. It is very deadly, but your characters are super badass. This cover is excellent. It's by the Basic Expert, and I think shows you exactly the kinds of things you're going to be doing in Horde Wars, which is awesome. You're going to be wearing fucking plate mail and wading into hordes of enemies and potentially going into wars. And there's going to be dragons that come down and nuke castles and all sorts of things like this. It's excellent. So this is a game that's firmly in the tradition of Dungeons and Dragons and the adventure RPG that we all know and love, but it is different. It plays very similarly in terms of the rules. It's a roll high system. You're going to use a D12 instead of a D20, but don't freak out. Don't void your bowels. Don't spray your ink everywhere. This is more fun. The D12 is more fun, and it's the same basic mechanic. You roll a D12, you add a bonus, you compare that to the target number to see if you succeeded or failed. That's the baseline core mechanic of the game. It's dead simple. Now, the advantage of using a D12 is that you're going to get critical hits a lot more often. You're also going to, roll natural ones a little more often as well. But when you roll a critical hit in this game, they're devastating. You do double damage, and that doesn't mean you double the dice that you're rolling. It's you roll damage, add any modifiers that you have, and then multiply that by 2, and that's what hits the enemy. So it's easy to even as a first level character in some cases, do like 40 or 50 hit points worth of damage. And again, this is why it's Horde Wars. You're going to be fighting a lot of enemies. But even though your characters are super badass in this game, it's dangerous. The monsters in this game are rough and they're really fun. Like the thing about the combat in this game is that you are just on the edge of your seat the entire time. Like we have played every single session. We've come out almost having had a total party kill. We've had one character death who he got resurrected. We've had multiple characters reduced to 0 hit points a bunch of times, which means they were bleeding out and on the verge of death. But we were able, just by the skin of our teeth in several instances, able to pull through and overcome the battles. That kind of fun and anticipation and risk is really missing from a lot of games. And so that's something that this does brilliantly. But before we go any farther with this and look at the differences between the books and start talking about the rules and everything like that, we're going to do a little word from our sponsor, which is Worldsmith. When your D&D players go rogue and veer into uncharted territory, Worldsmith is your lifesaver. Built for those moments when your RPG prep crumbles, it can instantly create campaign-specific content, new monsters, magic items, NPCs, maps, or full encounters with unique objectives tailored to your game. When you need something on the fly, Worldsmith lets you choose the level of detail you need. You can specify everything from the challenge rating of an encounter down to the time of day and location. But it isn't just rolling up a few monsters for you. You can add a custom note that specifies details important to your particular session and give the opponents goals, add phases to a battle, and even give you inspiration for new adventures and ideas in the future of your campaign. This tool is made by people who love the game as much as you do. So sign up at the link on screen or in the description and tell them that Black Lodge Games sent you. So what are the differences between these 2 books? You can see there's a little bit of difference between the way the color came out on the covers. The important thing here is that the hardcover is a little more expensive. And I think if I had to choose, I didn't have to choose because Todd sent us these books as a courtesy, which was very wonderful, and we appreciate that. And this is not a paid review, just so you know. I did get the books for free, though. If I had to choose, I would probably go with the hardcover. And the reason that you'll see is I'm going to be doing the review out of this version of the book because it lays flat, which is very important for running the game at the table. This version of it, though, looks a little nicer, to be honest. The interior, the art in this book, as you'll see, there's a lot of the art in the monster section is excellent. It's all a unified style. I don't know if it's all the same artist. I could probably check the credits to find out, but I'm not going to. It's all a unified style, so everything looks like it belongs in the same world with everything. The pictures are really, really great. I really like the art. It's got a lot of different color and contrast, and it looks beautiful. If we look at the same page in the hardcover, the color depth is not as good. It's, I don't know what the difference, it must have been like a choice in paper stock and things like that. Probably just costs associated with producing the book, but the hardcover version is a little bit more faded in terms of the color contrast and color depth. Like if I go to that same dragon picture, you'll see that this same dragon picture, it's still got all the same detail and everything like that, but it doesn't pop off the page in the same way, which is a shame because the art in this book is very good. Most of the art is going to be in the monster section, which I think was the correct choice, but it does leave a little bit to be desired. However, you can see this is laying flat, and this one, if I have my hand on it, it lays flat, but if I let go, it flips closed. And that's just the nature of having a softbound book. The softbound book is cheaper than the hardcover. The hardcover, I think, is a little more usable at the table. Both are excellent. Otherwise, the content is identical. There's no difference whatsoever. So besides the combat being fun, what is it that makes this game special? Well, there's kind of a lot. And one of the things about this is that I really like it. It's very refreshing. The core rules of the game start on page 1. You get the full system. It's 13 pages. That's all it is of the entire core system for the game. You'll know how to do essentially everything as a player that you need, all of the relevant terms, how your character works, how to build a character. All of that is going to come from these first 13 pages. And it's a really easy system to read. This is one of the things that I have to say about this game. It is probably the clearest rule set that I've ever read. There's no ambiguity. I've had to ask 1 or 2 questions in the Gilded server that they have. The community there is excellent. They answer all the questions, but the rules are just so clearly presented. And that is such a huge advantage because many games leave a lot of ambiguity, or there's added complexity where it doesn't necessarily need to be. And you get in debates about rules and everything like that. That's not going to happen with this game because it is very, very clear. Now, as you can see, the layout is a little sparse. This would be my main criticism of the book, is that this is in single column format. I really would have preferred a double column format. I think that's a little easier on the eyes. It's easier to track as you're reading and not, if I start on the first line and I skip down to the third line by accident with my eyes aren't perfect. I would have really preferred a 2-column layout. The layout, I think, is the thing that leaves the most to be desired about this book, but I would say do not let that get in the way of you playing this because you would be missing out immensely on something very special. So the rules are going to tell you how turns and rounds work, all the attack terms, how your armor, protection, and immunity is going to work, how to use maneuvers and special abilities, and all of the things that are going to come into play from day one. It's all explained up front, and it's a very low buy-in on players to read these rules. You don't have to tell them, hey, here's the Horde Wars book, read the whole thing before we can play. Really, you can tell them, read the first 13 pages, just read the rules, and then you'll probably want to make a character, and you'll have the additional, not rules, but the additional options and things you have to choose after that. And it's a very low buy-in. Making characters in this game is very simple, very easy. It doesn't have the same level of speed as something like an OSR game, like OSE or Axe or Shadowdark, where you just have a couple of rolls and then you have a character. This, you do have to make a couple of choices, but you're still not going to be bogged down in tons and tons of options. It would have been nice to have maybe like a random character generation method in here, but there's also just concerns of space and you can't please everyone with literally everything. But making characters is very easy. Combat, very easy to run. You've got, rules for random travel times. You have the different range increments. Everything is very clear and upfront here. The different creature types, there are essentially 3 different creature types. You have what I believe are called beasts, which are going to be your kind of like naturally occurring animals and things in the world. And that's not just bears. That includes things like dinosaurs and other things. You have monsters, which are going to be more explicitly evil and weird. And then you have characters. And the characters are going to be like humanoid people, things that are like playable species in the game. Those will be your characters. And the monster manual is divided into 3 sections that covers all of those. And the monster manual is amazing. It's not a monster manual. Everything you need to play is in this book. Horde Wars is a complete game. From start to finish, you have characters, character advancement, travel rules, dungeons, monsters, mass combat, realm play. You have everything you need in this. So it's one book for an entire game, and the game is going to last for a very, very long time. There's so much you can do with just this book, and I cannot wait to tell you about the setting and all the game master tools in the back. But as we go through, you get more rules. We have, objects and walls and breaking gates and all of that stuff, sample traps and what they'll do to you. What are the DCs you need to avoid them or notice them or to disarm them, things like that. And then you get to character creation. And like I said, this is very, very simple. What you're going to do is pick your species. There's a list and they tell you the benefits and costs of each. You're then going to calculate your hit points, choose 2 careers. These are going to be your classes that you have. You get to choose 2, so you don't have to do subclassing or anything like that. I can play a wizard who's also a knight, or a priest who's also an assassin. You get all of these combinations and you don't choose like, okay, well, which part of the assassin do I want and which part of the priest do I want? It's not how it works. You choose priest and assassin, you get all of the abilities of both classes. And when you choose that class, you're going to get a equipment package that's on each one of the classes, and you just choose one equipment package. That's your starting gear. You don't have to go through and spend your starting money and choose what you want. It's just dead simple. You get one equipment package, very easy to make a character. You gain between 2 and 4 experience points per adventure. It takes 12 experience points to level up. When you level up, you're going to get some additional hit points and a perk. A perk is going to be from this list down here. At level 3, you're going to get an additional feature. And this is going to be kind of like a feat or like a special ability of some kind. And that will take some choice. They're all listed and they tell you what they do a little bit later in the book. And this kind of just trades off this way level by level. It's perk feature, blah, 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 blah. Except that every 4 levels, this goes from levels 1 to 12, you gain a tier. So if I get to level 5, I have now entered tier 2. Tier 2 is going to give me a lot of new stuff. I get what's called a capstone. A capstone is a really strong ability that's going to be either associated with one of my careers or with my species. And you get 2 of these through the course of the game. You get another one at level 9. And these are really, really potent abilities. And so based on the choice of your race and your 2 careers and the choices that you make of choosing features and capstones and everything as you level up, you get a very unique character build. And none of these character builds are broken. And the thing is, you don't have to chart these out like you would do in like a 3rd edition D&D game or something like that. There's not endless complexity to this. You're not gaining tons of new spells and new abilities every single level. You get incremental boosts and you do get new powers over time, but you're never going to end up with a list of like 40 different abilities to choose from in battle. You're going to have a fairly limited list. You're going to have a list that's very versatile, but it's going to be fairly limited as to what you can choose from. So this gets rid of the kind of decision paralysis that is associated with a lot of these games. Now, also, if you have a fighting style, like you get to choose 1 or 2 fighting styles when you first start, like say I have a sword, I want to be specialized in the sword. That means that you can make 2 attacks that round with that weapon. So anyone can use any weapon, but if you have fighting style in a weapon, you can make 2 attacks that round. So you're very devastating going through, like I said, hordes of enemies. This is also why you're able to go through hordes of enemies, because you can make multiple attacks during a round. And you're going to have different abilities and maneuvers in some cases that are going to allow you to make additional attacks, which is excellent. And some of those abilities are multiple attacks in themselves. So it moves very, very quickly. You get these things called maneuvers that you can use once per round. at any time for the most part. Some of them are reactive, like they can only be used under certain circumstances, but some can be used basically any time. Like I'm playing a warlord character, and some of you might remember from 4th edition there was a warlord, and the warlord could kind of do things like tell an ally to make an attack against someone else. You know, you're giving them a command order, and the warlord can do that in this game. It's very, very useful because if someone whiffs their attacks against some monster that has to die, or we're all going to die, I can say, get your head in the fight, kill him, and he gets to make another attack. That's not on my turn. That's whenever I want during the battle, but I can only use one maneuver per round. So if I have another defensive maneuver that I might want to use, if I've already told my friend to make another attack, I can't use my defensive maneuver when someone attacks me. So there's a lot of choice and tactics, and it keeps you involved in the game when it's not your turn, which is really cool and a lot of fun. And the combat system, I don't want to go too in depth with it here, but it is just a tremendous amount of fun. Like I said, there's a lot to cover, so I'm going to actually kind of focus more on the features that are offered to the game master after this. But you do have different species. These are a lot of the standard fantasy races. You know, we got elves and hobbits and dwarves and humans and orcs. You can be an orc in this, and orcs have orc regeneration, which means at the beginning of your turn, if it has been at least 1 minute since you last took damage, you regain your full maximum hit points. Now, this is not something that is unique to the orcs. There are a lot of monsters in this game that have a regeneration ability, and they're super, super scary. Like a werewolf has a regeneration ability, but this is not like in D&D, like a troll gains 1d4 hit points per round or whatever it is. It's if you haven't been damaged by, if the werewolf has not been hit by solar damage or a silver weapon, they regain all of their hit points at the end of the round. And they have a lot of hit points. So they're ferocious. So they're very dangerous, and you have to be very strategic and tactical. And when you're first playing and you haven't run into certain monsters before, you don't know what their immunities and protections are, if they have these regeneration abilities. You have to do kind of experiments to see like what's actually really hurting this thing. And if you don't have anyone in your party, like there are some high-level monsters in this game that have protection and immunity against almost every type of damage. And so you have to have a very versatile party and be able to think quickly and decide, should we actually just fucking run away? Because this thing might kill us and we can't even harm it. It makes for a super tense game. Like I said, very tense, very, very fun though. After the races though, we go to the character careers. Like I said, you get to choose 2. You can choose any 2. There's no restrictions on these. Like I like doing something like I did a Blade Master with a blue wizard. So he's a blue wizard who can, shoot lightning and fly, but he's also like a master swordsman. That's really cool. You can also just specialize and be a blue wizard, red wizard if you want. And what separates your characters from the NPCs and the other regular people that you're going to meet in this world is that you get 2 careers. You can run into a red mage. He might even be an archmage, but he's only going to be 1 career. He's only going to have the abilities of that 1 career. So that's how you're kind of special and set apart from everyone and makes you a little bit more badass. There is a like gritty grinder mode where you can just choose 1 career, but I wouldn't recommend playing it that way because I do think it would be less fun. And part of the fun in this game is the heroism and the power fantasy of it. But it's power fantasy with consequences. And as you can see, again, the layout here, the careers, I think, are probably the weakest part of the layout simply because there's a lot of blank space. If this had been done in a 2-column format with maybe some art here, that would be a little bit nicer. It doesn't really matter, is the thing. I would love for this to be beautiful and laid out, but it's the game is the most important part, and this is a rare case where the game is just excellent. This, I can't really understate this. I really, really like this game, and it is better than pretty much any adventure game that most adventure games that I've played in this style, like this action RPG type of thing where like you're going to be kicking a lot of ass. It's so tight. And it's been so well play tested. That's another thing, is extremely well play tested. So the systems that are here actually work. So there's a lot of different classes, and you get a lot of abilities with certain ones. Like the priest gets a lot. They're super useful to have around. You can be a tavern wench, which again, this is not a gender restricted class, but this is more of kind of like a social influence character. A skald is like kind of like a Viking. Actually, I'm wrong. A Skald is not like a Viking because there is a Viking. But there's the Warlord, the different types of wizards. They all do different magic and have different benefits. They're very, very cool. And then you have your skills. The skills are going to tell you exactly what your skills do, how they operate. The skills are very simple. They just provide a bonus to a D12 roll when you're doing a skill check. There are some other things that you get along with them. Like if you know arts and culture, you'll know more about these seasonal festivals. You have astronomical events with astronomy, your combat, how many fighting styles you get, things like that. It's very simple. When you're a tier 1 character, you get a +2 to any skill that you have training in. When you are tier 2, you're going to get a +3 in those trained skills. And when you're tier 3, you're going to get a +4. And these bonuses don't sound like much, but since you are on a D12 and it's a much smaller spread than that D20, a +2 bonus is enormous. And a +4 bonus is really, really dramatic. And there's a lot of interesting parts about the lore within the skill chapter as well. So this is definitely worth reading for especially game masters, but really the players should be reading it as well. Features, you have general features. These are like feats, I guess you would say, combat features. There's supernatural and magic features as well. There's a lot to choose from. Very easy to understand, very well explained. Some of them have prerequisites. The supernatural ones like Enchanter, this is only for anyone who has a wizard class. If you don't have a wizard class or career, you can't choose this one. Simple as. But once we get past this, we have equipment. It's going to tell you all the different properties of weapons, which are very, very easy to understand. Things like heavy and penetrating. You get a little chart that tells you what these do. Heavy. If you score a critical hit with a heavy weapon, roll an extra die of damage, which means not only are you doubling the rolled damage, but you're adding an additional die to the damage. Impact is excellent. You score a critical hit on an attack of 11 or 12. So now you're critting twice as often with that kind of weapon. If you score a critical hit with a penetrating weapon, that attack ignores protection. And the way immunity and protection works, if I have immunity from slashing damage, that means I take 0 points of damage no matter what they rolled. If I have protection from that kind of damage, I take 50% of whatever the damage is that was rolled. If I have a penetrating weapon that is slashing damage and someone has protection to slashing damage, my penetrating weapon ignores that protection and I do full damage against them. So there's a lot to choose from with the different weapon types that are not simply down to, the damage die that you're going to be rolling with it. But there's a lot more to the equipment here. It's going to go through general adventuring gear, different kits that you can get. These are like tool kits, camping gear, disguise kits, lockpicks, medicine kits, and they're not exhaustible. So if I have a medicine kick, I can use this to stabilize someone multiple times. If I have lockpicks, unless I break the lockpicks or lose them or something like that, I'm going to be able to continue using that. So this is like a one-time investment unless something happens to the gear, but you get to use them over and over again. You've also got mounts and just everything that you could possibly need to adventure or feed people and troops. As we get to Kingdoms and Warfare, there's a very simple domain system here, like a domain record. Each one of these is a domain record for a different place. Tells you about, how much taxes you have to pay, what's the upkeep of the domain, how much money it gets you, how many troops you have available and whatnot. And you can use these troops, and it's got all these different seasonal events that can happen if you're ruling a domain, which you should want to do eventually because it's a very cool part of the game. Development and growth, like how you can actually expand your realm, make your castle bigger and better, how much time and money that takes. It's 5,000 crowns. For every 5,000 crowns of construction work you have to do, it takes a month of time to do. So if you want to construct a castle or something like that, which is 150,000 crowns, it's going to take a while to do it. But they also recommend that time advance a little bit faster when you're doing these kind of realm play things. The systems are very, very simple. This is not going to give you the kind of depth in domain play that something like Adventurer Conqueror King system is going to give you. And that is actually fine to me. I love Axe and I love the domain system in that, but it is very involved. And compared to something like this, it's very, very heavy, but it's also trying to do something quite a bit different than Horde Wars is. Horde Wars is basically attempting to just be a fun action adventure game that has, you can do some realm play and everything like that, but we're not trying to simulate, the morale of the domain at all times and the different kinds of invasions and incursions and things you can have. It doesn't take the level of detail that Axe does, because Axe really is trying to do something else. It's trying to like simulate history in a way, which is very cool, but it's a different sort of a thing. You can raise armies and siege engines and attack other kingdoms, and it does have a mass battle system, but the mass battle system is a little different. This is not a separate set of rules for warfare where it's like, okay, well, now I've got 120 troops in a company, and what does this company do? What's the average damage, and how many troops do they kill, and what's their morale break and everything like that. It's a lot more simplified. And again, because this is trying to be a different sort of game than what I think a lot of people are attributing to a domain style game in a lot of ways. So the way that mass battles work is that based on different circumstances, the judge is going to basically make a 1d12 table that's going to have different outcomes, and rolling lower is worse outcomes for the players, and rolling higher is better outcomes. And what this does is to determine the overall result of the battle. So your characters are going to be engaged in a number of encounters during a battle. So you'll roll 1d4, and this is going to tell you how many engagements in the battle that the players are a part of, how many major parts of the battle they are. And then you're just going to use the standard Horde Wars combat rules to resolve those encounters. Now, depending on if you succeed or fail in those encounters, like the example here, I think, is you're in charge of making sure that this gatehouse is secure during a siege, that the troops don't break through. If I succeed at the goal in that encounter, I'm going to get a +1 to this battle resolution roll. And so there's kind of this push and pull between how many encounters you actually want to be engaged in, because you can die in all of them. But if you succeed on multiple encounters, it's going to give you a lot of bonuses to this D12 roll. The D12 roll, like I said, is going to determine the outcome of the battle. So on a roll of 1 or below, the enemy wins a major victory. Your side loses 40% of its army and flees the region. On the flip side, a 12 or above, your side wins a major victory, slaying 40% of the enemy army, and they flee the region. And so your success or failure, if you fail in those encounters, you're actually getting penalties to this roll. And so it's not arbitrary, but it does simplify what most people are going to think mass combat does. And this doesn't take away from the large engagements, though, because encounters in Horde Wars, like I said, the name is Horde Wars. The name is Horde Wars. You will wade into battle against lots and lots of combatants. You can easily run combat encounters in Horde Wars that have 40 or 50 combatants, and it will run quickly. That'll be a major fight for sure, but you could do 40 or 50 enemies in a given encounter, and you can run this very, very easily. Once you start going past that, I think it would be very difficult to do. Todd, I think, said he did something like 150 on a side, and he said that was really pushing it. But Horde Wars is capable of having a lot of enemies on the battlefield in the standard combat rules. So I haven't done a mass battle like this yet, but I think it's going to be fun. The rest of the game that I have played is very fun. And the rest of the book is really going to be Game Master material. So you have nautical adventures and how to run them. This is going to tell you basically how to run ships and how to run encounters, seafaring encounters, how weather is going to affect things. This is all really cool stuff. And you get this massive seafaring encounter table that covers rivers, shallows, and the deep. When you're doing one of these adventures, very much like the mass battles, if you travel somewhere, the players are going to roll 1d4, and that's going to tell them how many encounters that they're going to have over the course of this travel. Then you'll have them roll 1d20 for each encounter to determine what shows up and what they're fighting, what they will most likely have to fight. It's not always a fight. And if they roll a 20, that actually means they're going to roll another 1d6, which is going to be a much harder encounter than anything on this list. And it's a lot of fun when you have the players do this, because the onus is on them. They blame each other when they roll poorly. It's very cool. But these encounters, these monsters are really deadly. You have your Game Master advice, how to use timers treasure and its consequences, and random NPC generating table. This is stuff that a lot of people are going to be very familiar with. It has the overland encounters and travel rules, which is very clearly explained. This is, again, familiar to everybody. And then you have the different overland encounter tables for different types of regions. And there's a lot of variance in these things. And these monsters are really one of the most important part of the game. They're so fucking good. And like I said, you have all of these really tough encounters. So just traveling somewhere is going to be extremely dangerous and offers up a lot of adventure, but it's also very easy. It's even simpler than doing a hex crawl, because if you're doing a hex crawl, you're generally going to be rolling for an encounter every time you enter a new hex. And then you might have to do a bunch of like sub rolls and everything like that. This is just basically like for any journey that you're taking, you're going to roll for a certain number of encounters. Something will happen. And you can avoid these. Your players, if they have the requisite skills, everyone can make like a survival check, things like that. And if the majority of the players succeed on that survival check, this actually allows them to bypass the encounters, get to safety. But traveling in this game is really important and a lot of fun. Like I said, it's very much, this is something that you are going to be used to if you have played any sort of an old school game, but the mechanics are a lot easier and a lot more clearly explained. It's really quite excellent. Then you get on to the chapter on beasts. These are going to be animals, naturally occurring things that you can run into, like bears and eagles, some weird stuff, weird cats. You have cattle, a wild ox, and a thunderbull. A thunderbull is not technically a monster. You've got dinosaurs are beasts, elephants, different types of game. This is where the game really starts to shine the most, in my opinion, is this monster section, especially once we get to monsters themselves. And every single monster that is in here, and we're still in the beasts section technically, but like a wyvern, you've got these different stat blocks for different types, and it tells you everything you need to know to run the monster. It's super, super easy. The fitness ability, senses ability, +4 on each. This thing is a beast, 60 hit points, and it's different traits. Armored Hide. Your Armored Hide absorbs the first damage that you would take from an attack each round. Every round, the first attack that goes against this thing doesn't do any damage. Doesn't matter if you crit, nothing. Unless you have an attack that bypasses absorption, which does exist. Frenzy. You deal an extra die of damage against creatures that are below their maximum hit points. So if anyone's hurt, you go into a blood frenzy and you do extra damage against them. It makes them so you can see this thing escalates very quickly. Maneuvers. It has Stinger, natural weapon, affliction from poison. Make an attack against a target within 2 combat spaces for 2d8 umbral damage. If you damage a creature with a critical hit, he gains a level of affliction. Now, affliction is a really interesting mechanic, because instead of inflicting negative penalty, like negatives and penalties on a die roll and making people do subtraction, what you do is, if I have a level of affliction, my character can no longer roll a d12 to succeed. He can roll a d10. If he gets another level of affliction, he can roll a d8. So the range of my success is rapidly diminishing with this. And it means if you have any levels of affliction, you cannot roll a 12 and you cannot crit. So things get very, very dangerous, but it keeps the math. So I just roll my die and I add a bonus. I never have to do any subtraction or anything. It was a very clever way of avoiding subtraction, which is not hard, but people do have a harder time with it. Then you get into the monster section. These are the fucked up and weird things that are out there. Cyclopses and dragons. There's a lot of different dragons, and they are really beasts. Some of them are super, like, I don't even know how you would destroy these things. Like this one, Nothdeer the Radiant, 600 hit points. 600 hit points. All of these different abilities and actions, so much in this game that can absolutely fucking annihilate you. And it's so much fun when you take one of these monsters, one of these dragons or boss monsters of some kind, and you just throttle them and you beat them. It really feels earned, because to defeat these monsters, you do have to earn it. They're all very, very dangerous. Even the sort of lower level monsters can really screw you up, especially if they get critical hits. But these things, like, oh my God, fiends, these things are nuts. They are so powerful. And the really interesting thing about some of these is that some of the monsters scale with the party. So you don't need to come up with, we have Og, the Giant King. We don't need to come up with the Dire Giant King, or anything like that, because under their abilities, things like this, maneuvers, it has a berserk ability. You gain damage reduction, 4 for the next minute. All damage that would be dealt to you is reduced by that amount. He has this twice per day per tier. Now, this is not tier of the monster. This is the tier of the party. If I have advanced to level 5, my characters are now tier 2. He gets this twice per day per tier. So that's 4 times per day. And a lot of the monsters, not all of them, but many of the more potent monsters have that ability. So you can fight something like, a lich, or, oh my God, these horrors. We fought some of these things. These almost fucking killed us last session. But like a lich, they also have this. They have a lightning bolt. They can use that twice per day per tier. Undead Legion once per day. We have another one, Fireball. They can do that twice per day per tier. So as your characters get more powerful, so too can the Lich. You can throw this monster at them confidently without having to come out with some sort of super variant of that monster or rejigger its stats somehow. It's that you get all of these abilities that you can just scale up with them as they gain more experience. The deadly monsters get more deadly as your characters advance. And it's really like, I really actually like that. It was a very smart way of doing thing. The vampires are really cool. We haven't fought one yet. We might very soon, though, if we go to the vampire in the swamp. But there's tons and tons of these things. And like I said, like the werewolf, this thing has 120 hit points. And if you don't damage it with silver or solar damage in the same round, it goes all the way back up to 120. So these things can fuck you up. It's absolutely insane. The art in this is all very excellent as well. Like I said, it's all kind of a unified style. And then you get the NPCs. These are the characters, basically. The other playable races that you will encounter. So you can encounter elves and halflings and different types of orcs and human barbarians. And this gives you different types of human barbarians. You get human soldiers, from different nations. Onsburg pikemen, Franconian horse archers. They all have their different abilities, their different stats. And it's great because if you want to do the realm play thing and you want to go and wage war against other human kingdoms, you have all of them here, which is excellent. So this is really this whole monster NPC section really shines because this gives you so much to work with as a game master. Then you have an excellent chapter on random treasure generation. Now, treasure, there is an XP variant, an XP for treasure variant that you can do with this. It's not necessarily just based on what you accomplish during a session. You give out 2 to 4 experience to players based on the difficulty of the adventure, 2 being an easy adventure, 4 being a hard adventure, and obviously 3 being in between. Now, the random encounters in the wilderness, they don't really change based on this difficulty. They're just hard because the wilderness is a very untamed, wild place. Dungeons, however, are going to be populated by different types of monsters. And if you're building a dungeon properly, there should be something in there that is there for a reason, whether you're going into a goblin encampment or an ogre cave, or maybe you've gone and found some sort of sunken temple that's filled with all sorts of demons and horrors. But you're going to have a number of encounters leading up to essentially a boss encounter. This is where you're going to fight a very powerful monster. And when you defeat a very powerful monster, this is when you get loot in this game. And loot, you're going to have each player roll for their own loot. You don't have to have them open the book and do it themselves. You can say, roll 1d20, we'll see what's next, roll this, roll that. And there's all these subtables where you're going to get treasure chests that are going to have, a bunch of money in them, magic items and artifacts, things of that nature. Now, there are a lot of pre-made artifacts and weapons and whatnot, but there's also some random generation in this as well, which is pretty cool. There's jewelry, rugs and wall hangings, decorations, ornamental musical instruments and things. And then you have artifact weapons, the special properties that come along with it. The special material, whether it's made from like black iron or silver or bronze, and these have different effects on different types of enemies. If it's avenging, I have an avenging blessed axe. So basically this means that if it's avenging, if there's an enemy that's hurt one of my allies in the battle, when I go to attack him, I deal an additional die of damage against him because it is avenging. If he hasn't already harmed someone, it doesn't do that, but it's also blessed. And so the blessed nature of this means that I basically roll my attack with advantage. So I roll 2d12 and take the higher result instead of just rolling 1d12. So you get really, really potent items here that have just these kind of different properties attached to them. But then there's also special weapons and special magic items. There's a whole lot here. And it's a lot of fun to have the players actually roll for this themselves and see what they get. You can kind of get crappy rolls every once in a while, but a lot of times you're going to get a lot of really cool stuff that's going to help you between levels do more damage and have more interesting things to do. And not all of these are just weapons and armor. You also get very weird stuff. Like there's this mask in here that's really fun. Like this, the Mask of Murder. This is awesome. Gray Knife. Whenever you use your flashing blade, that attack also deals an extra die of damage. Doppelganger. Whenever you kill another character, you assume that character's physical appearance. Other creatures will treat you as though you were that character unless you give away your identity in some manner. Veil of Death. Once donned, this item cannot be removed without destroying it. When you die, it falls off of your body. Neither Doppelganger nor Veil of Death can be ended by the wearer, which means when you put on this mask and you kill another character, you become that character and you can't change back. So there's a lot of weird kind of cursed items in here as well. It's a lot of fun, a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of really useful stuff. And after the treasure chapter, you get a sample adventure. And I've played this sample adventure run by Todd, and it's excellent. It's you start in a tavern, very easy. The town is immediately attacked by goblins, and the goblins kidnap a bunch of people and carry them off. And so you can go and pursue them to their lair, and this is your first dungeon crawl. You go through, you get a bunch of treasure if you live. It's an easy adventure. It's not easy, though. This is not an easy game. You can die in this sample adventure. It's fucking rad. It's a really, really good starting point because it starts you in the village of Grimstead. And the village of Grimstead is the kind of starting place in this realm called Grimstead in the Witchwood. And this is where the setting starts. It's going to start with this adventure, and it gives you a bunch of different hooks that are just in this town for different adventures that are very, very easy to run and turn into an actual campaign or session. Now here you get a map of the Witchwood. And like I said, the softcover does look better. This is one place. Oh, I opened right to it. You can see there's a lot more color depth to this. There's a little bit of this bleed on the page on the hardcover version that it does look nicer here. But you get this full map and you get a bunch of points of interest that all have these block descriptions. So it's like each page has two separate adventures going over different locations in this sandbox area. But the thing is, not all of the points of interest on here are provided. So you get a lot of hooks and a lot of really interesting adventures. And these are difficult and challenging and interesting places to go and see. But you also have a bunch that you get to fill out yourself. And this whole area, you can do an entire campaign just in this one Witchwood. It's like this kind of backwater that has become overgrown with monsters. It's in the country of Mercia. This is like a fantasy Europe, basically, with the serial numbers filed off. Mercia it's a large country. It has a king, but this backwater has just kind of been overgrown for a very, very long time. Grimstead has not had a Lord of Grimstead in like 2 generations almost. And so you start here. That first adventure is at the Goblin Warrens, which is here, which is like 18 miles, I think, from here. So there's not really a scale on this, which is fine. It doesn't matter. Each entry tells you how far away things are, and that is going to determine, encounters that you're going to have along the way. But there's a lot going on here, and it's not simply, there's just goblins here, or there's the ogre camp, the troll caves or whatever, where there's trolls. It's not that. They're all kind of interlinked, and there's a bigger hook in each one that leads to a lot of interesting stuff, like the Ruined Keep. This is the adventure that we did a couple of sessions ago, where we found this ruined keep. We were told there were probably bandits out there. There's not anymore though. And there's something else here. There's something really important here. And this was where I thought we were fucking toast, and we just got by the skin of our teeth. We almost died here. But as a result, my character is now the Lord of Grimstead because of this. And I have a fucking castle, and I have a bunch of money that I have to dump into this thing to get it fixed up. And I don't have enough money to actually keep paying for all of the people to fix it up. So we have to go on more adventures. And now we're in the Abandoned Silver Mine. Now, the Abandoned Silver Mine, this is one of the locations that's not actually detailed detailed in the book. And so our GM has taken this and converted this into a mega dungeon. And after you go through this, where it gives you this first starting area, there's so much going on here. Like Firehearth Keep, there is a lord there who's basically just been in charge of keeping this road clear so that you can get from the Witchwood into the mountains. On the other side of the mountains is the land of Andalas, I believe, which is sort of like a fantasy Spain, but it's ruled by draconic people, dragon people. And in the mountains, there's the Caverns of Abaddon. And Abaddon is another mega dungeon that will take a long, long time to clear and is very, very dangerous. But this guy is always looking to buy artifacts from adventurers who go to Abaddon. In our campaign, he's thinking of setting up a toll for adventurers, and we're going to get a cut for anyone who wants to go there. Of course, we're going to clear it as much as we can before that happens. But we were like, we need resources. There's got to be silver here. And if there's not silver, there's probably something down there that needs to be killed and that has a bunch of shit that we can take from it so that I can have my castle rebuilt. Once I get this castle rebuilt and my claim to Grimstead is secure, and it will be secure, I am going to start getting involved in the politics of the realm, because it's like they've sent writers to the king telling them that I'm the Lord of Grimstead. And he's going to have to come send messengers to verify my claim. And there's going to be all this kind of political intrigue going on. But there's so much going on in just this little area that you really can do like an entire campaign. These adventures are so succinct and so clear. It's one of those things that we love. We talk about this with our own stuff. We try to say, we give you we want to give you the premise and we want you to go, got it. I understand what it is. That's what these are. And they give you a lot to work with. They're short. They're not massive things. This is such an easy game to run that if you pick this up and you read it, you can just, out of these chapters, you can start with the sample adventure, and then you have all of these hooks just for the town of Grimstead that you can then go on and explore the rest of the Witchwood. And after you get through this, it's going to tell you how to run dungeons, but how to run mega dungeons. And this is a really interesting part, because everyone thinks that for a mega dungeon, you're going to need some huge fucking map and every room has to be keyed and all of this stuff. No, that's not how it works. Building your own mega dungeon is very easy. You probably will need a map, and you can get those for free online. Go find some like free Dyson Logos stuff. He makes amazing things. Just get the map, and then you just make the encounter table for it. You don't need to have every room keyed. You can just run it completely with random encounters. And so for the Caverns of Abaddon, there's 3 major levels to this. And it gives you a little description of the main entrance and the kinds of places that you're going to be going through with 2 major areas, the gallery and the grotto. There's kind of 2 entrances here. Then you have beneath that, the ruins of Abaddon. This is these vast caverns of partially collapsed buildings and structures are all that remain of the ancient city. Piles of rubble and collapsed stonework act as hindering terrain. Surviving portions of buildings vary from 1 to 4 combat spaces in height. It is said that the creator wiped out Abaddon for its debauchery and worship of the Dark One. And because this is fantasy Europe with the serial numbers filed off, it's a monotheistic world in terms of like the gods that like the kind of human and humanoid nations worship. There is one God. There is the creator, and it's this sort of stand-in for the Catholic Church. The organization of the church is very similar. This is not written by a Catholic, and there is nothing preachy or religious about it, but it's like Todd made the right decision in that if you want to do fantasy Europe, you can't really do fantasy medieval Europe without an analog for the Catholic Church. It's great. There's not much deep about that in the book. The creator and the Dark One, there is this kind of like evil kind of satanic figure there. But the other races in the game, like the draconic races, they worship these actual dragons. And you can fight these dragons that are their gods out there. So there are different religions in the world, but for the most part, this is like a monotheistic fantasy Europe. It's very cool. So there was this ancient city that got destroyed, Sodom and Gomorrah style, but I'm sure it was much worse than Sodom and Gomorrah because it's, filled with demons and monsters and shit. And then beneath that, you have the Dark Temple. So these are 3 major sectors. And so the entire mega dungeon is encapsulated in a single random encounter table. So you have a D20 table for the natural caverns. You have a D20 for the ruins of Abaddon and a D20 table for the Dark Temple. And each one of these sets of encounters is going to give you, it gets progressively more difficult. And when you get to, it's like if you roll the 1, there's a pit trap, or roll again if you've already hit the pit trap. So you have a bunch of different traps. You have empty areas where there's kind of nothing. And then you have a ton of different types of monsters. In each level, there's going to be probably 2 boss monsters. And you can expand this to be more if you have a truly big dungeon space. Now, when you roll a 20, that means that you're getting a boss monster. And you're then going to get either on the first level, Glug the Boneless, who's in the monster section, or a Greater Aberration, which is also in the monster section. Plus, there's a bunch of other stuff in that encounter. If you roll that, you enter the room and that's what's there. However, if you roll monsters that are associated with this, with Glug the Boneless, he's a goblin. If you roll a goblin encounter, that means that you're then going to roll 1d4, and that's the number of consecutive rooms. That's how far away this monster is. And so it makes your map a lot more dynamic. You don't have to populate everything and tell, okay, Glug the Boneless is in this room. Maybe he is, and you can do it that way if there's a particular reason that, Glug would be in a particular room. But it's as you're progressing through the dungeon, once you start running into troops that are associated with that boss monster, it means that within 1 to 4 encounters, that's how far away Glug the Boneless actually is. And so this will kind of, if you know that it's goblins in there, characters might know, okay, we're coming up, we're about to find him. That's going to be your boss room. And so each level can have multiple bosses and multiple sorts of encounters with those types of things. Now, you can restock the dungeon, obviously, and I think you're supposed to. In a way, it's like the rooms kind of restock until you defeat the boss monster associated with that troop type. I may be conflating things with Axe at this point. I can't remember. I'm just reading too many games at the moment. But then, once you move between sectors, if I'm moving from the natural caverns into the Ruins of Abaddon, I continue to use this encounter table. But once I get into the Ruins of Abaddon, I'm using this encounter table. And I'm going to have more powerful boss monsters on that level. I have Lich and Medusa. And then the Dark Temple is going to have a Rot Fiend and Skarmag Shadowstalker, which is a dragon. These are all really hard monsters to kill, so that gets progressively harder. Now, if I moved from the Ruins of Abaddon back to the Natural Caverns, when I'm going through that transitional area, I continue using the Ruins of Abaddon sector. So anytime I'm moving sectors, I'm using the table for the sector I'm in until I get to that next one. And then you have the Dark Temple. So this is one page that encapsulates probably dozens and dozens of encounters and rooms that you're going to have. It's a very easy way to do this. If you kind of world build the dungeon a little bit, kind of what's in there, and you come up with these different types of encounters that you can have, you don't need to know exactly what's in every room. It's awesome. It's so easy to run. This is one of the things that I think is so fantastic about this game. There's been a lot of games, coming out that are doing stuff like this. This is unique in the way that this is set up. But having good GM tools and good encounters and good systems to rely on for generating the content that you're in the game, it takes so much weight off your shoulders, and you can just run a game very, very easily with minimal preparation. You can prepare all this stuff, which is totally fine as well, because people do get enjoyment out of that. I do get that. It's like world building and building dungeons. If that's your thing, like, go wild. But if you have kids, or you don't have time, or you just hate doing prep work and you only want to play the game when you're playing the game, you can just do this. And this is really, really fantastic. It's super easy. And there will be people who will say, well, you can just do that in any RPG. Of course, you can take this idea and use it in another RPG. And I will be doing that in other RPGs. I have not seen it presented this way, and I don't have to go through multiple pages and multiple appendices and all of this shit to run this dungeon, which is excellent. It's very well organized. This game is very, very well done. And then after you get through there, you have things for traveling merchants. These are other kind of people and merchant caravans and plot hooks that you're going to find in this area of the Witchwood. And that's when we move on to the full campaign setting. And this is a beautiful map of our fantasy Europe. Like I said, we have Andalus, Mercia, which is sort of like medieval England, in my opinion, Arnsberg, which is sort of Germany, Franconia, France, obviously. We have Brigmar, maybe Germany, I don't know, Valheim, which is where the orcs are from, and Arwen, which is where the elves live. This would technically be England in real life, but this is where the elves make their home for the most part. And this map was done by Paddy's Parlor. He's an excellent artist, and it's huge because the Witchwood, this whole area that I showed you that has starting area, this whole thing is this tiny little bit of woods right here. And the mountains where the caverns of Abaddon are right here that lead on to Andalus. And you have this huge, absolutely huge continent to explore. And each country in here, this gives you, it's the continent of Valentia. It gives you a background, very, very brief background on this world. The fact that there are crusades and you can go on crusades if you can get enough of the nations together to agree to go on crusade against, the vile dragon men. And then each country has a 2-page spread that gives you the basics of how their government works. This one has male preference primogeniture. There's others that are basically just property transfers to male or female, whoever's the living heir, that sort of a thing. Tells you about their culture. And then it gives you these 3 major locations that have a bunch of adventure hooks in them. And so you get this for every country. It's a very simple, easy way to get involved in this world, in any country, and start having adventures and having adventures that cross these long boundaries between countries and getting involved in the politics between these countries. It's really quite good. And this was something that I looked at this originally. I was like, Fantasy Europe, whatever. Okay. I like that. But I might use Horde Wars and run Birthright because I was really interested in running Birthright. But the thing is, they used a lot of the design principles from Birthright to make this. So when I was starting reading this, I was like, oh, wait, no, I can and will just use this. And I'm having a blast playing in this. I really want to run it myself. Like a full campaign, there is so much here. There is so much here. Look at this. Just pages and pages and pages of adventure seeds and adventure ideas and all the different countries that you've got. This is a full fucking game. This book, this one, I think, is $45, this softcover, which looks gorgeous and has everything that you need, from a bajillion character options, super deadly monsters, excellent game master tools. This is like the highest bang for your buck that you could possibly get. And it's a slick system, and it's different than D&D. It's familiar enough that you're going to immediately be at home if you play this, but it is new. This is new, and it has some particular innovations that are very, very cool and very interesting. And it has a setting that is really well thought out and really good. You get everything. This is all you need to run this game forever. You could then use this, all of this stuff, these countries and this format basically have come up with three major points of interest with characters and adventures in basically what you could fit on 2 pages for a country. And you can build an entire setting like that very, very easily. So if you didn't want to run this in the default setting, you totally can take it and do something else with it. I've got my own ideas on what I want to do for my own custom setting for this, but it's the total package. You don't need to buy, the monster manual, the player's handbook, and the game master's guide, because it's all here. It's all here in one book for a very, very good price. And it's going to tell you, once you get past the setting stuff, that's basically over. It then has a bunch of sample characters. And this is what the character sheet looks like. And I have my character somewhere over here, right here. Yeah, I have my character here. This is, again, the layout isn't perfect on the character sheet. You do have space for your various abilities and actions. Since I chose some classes that have a lot of them, it's getting a little crunched. The thing is, I'm not going to get very many more. I'm going to get some capstones. I'll get some more, features or whatever, some more maneuvers. But I feel like the kind of spacing for various things could be done a little bit better on this. The weapons, you have enough space for everything you're going to need to write down. This one weapon has a billion things on it because it's a magic weapon. It's avenging. It's blessed. It does 1d10, and that means I attack with advantage. It does slashing damage, etc., etc. This is all super easy to handle. And it gives you a lot of these sample characters in here to give you an idea of what your sheet's going to look like at different tiers. these are NPCs that you can use, that you can run into, and then you get a blank character sheet. And that is the book. That's basically the entire thing. We have this wonderful dragon on the back. Go to blackwallgames.com to get this and let Todd know that Black Lodge Games sent you. But this is fantastic. In my opinion, I know it's only April, but in my opinion, Horde Wars Advanced is game of the year. My only complaint really is that I think the layout leaves something to be desired, but this is really fucking good. This is really, really fucking good. It's not a middle ground between something like because I kind of think of like the D&D spectrum of games now. You have basic D&D, which is kind of like Shadowdark right now. That's kind of the most popular basic D&D system, which is very good. And again, has excellent GM tools, all of that stuff. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have Adventure Conquer King system, which is like the simulationist masterpiece. That's gonna, oh man, that really, really scratches an itch that I have for verisimilitude and all the amazing shit you can do in that game. And that game is an achievement. And then you have Horde Wars, and it's not a middle ground between the two is the thing. Because it's not like, oh yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like, it's got more rules than Shadowdark, but not as much as Axe. That's not what would be interesting about this game. This has really tight rules. It is very concise while also being comprehensive. So it has more to offer. Like this has realm play. It has things that Shadowdark doesn't have. And it has a lot of things that Axe does have, but it does it without the really attention to every sort of detail and incentives and systems and everything like that. But I hesitate to call this some sort of a middle ground before it. It's just, it's its own thing, and it feels very unique. And the way that the powers work doesn't really feel like D&D in the same sense that Shadowdark or Axe does. It feels very, very, very different. I don't really know how to categorize it other than I would say that this is a fantasy action adventure RPG game. Like that, it has the adventure game core of old school style D&D stuff, but it's very much a game about kicking ass, and you're going to kick a lot of ass, and you're going to get your ass kicked a bunch. And so if you are someone, I would hesitate to compare this to like D&D 4th edition or anything like that, but there is an element of this game can be quite tactical but it doesn't get overbearing, and you don't have, terrible hit point bloat and terrible, like bloat on all your rolls where I'm adding a billion fucking bonuses and I'm rolling. It's like, well, what's the DC? 50, like, okay, well, I rolled 67, it's nothing like that. The numbers are going to stay very constrained. The math on all of the monsters and hit point tuning is excellent. It has a lot of customization within the character classes without complexity. There's so much to like about this game. So I can't recommend this enough. I really hope that people take a look at this and play it, because it's a lot of fun to run. It's a lot of fun to play in. It's very easy. And it's not easy in a way because, oh, this is like simplistic. It's easy in that it has been designed very well. This is kind of like if you have any experience writing code, when you see simple code, it's a thing of beauty. And it's very hard to write simple code, and it's this to me, this is simple code, which means that it is very, very concise, and it does what it says it does. It is very difficult to actually achieve that. And so this is, for me, this is game of the year so far. It's really, really good. It's not always going to be my mainstay. I'm still running Axe. I'm not going to stop doing that because I love that game, and there are depths to be delved in that game that I haven't even scratched the surface of yet. It's also not going to replace Shadowdark because it doesn't feel the same at all. Like they have very different feelings. But if you want a really good fantasy game that's going to last for a very, very long time and is very fun and very easy to run, you can't miss with Horde Wars. This game is phenomenal. So for me at the moment, this is game of the year, and I don't know what's going to dethrone it yet. We shall see. There's still quite a bit left in 2025, but I really suggest checking this out. Go to blackwallgames.com. If you're going to North Texas RPG Con, sign up to play in a Horde Wars game and go have a blast. And if you do get this game, you can, when you get this, you get access to the Guilded server, so you can go and play games with Todd online and with a bunch of other people. There's a ton of people playing. It's just super well tested, rock solid game. Black Lodge Games highly recommends Horde Wars.